Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon? That's like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick. Warwick runs on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. The Marathon Podcast is also on YouTube. If you want to go subscribe to that channel and watch the videos there, you can. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. Really appreciate you being here. If you want to support my podcast, the Marathon Podcast, feel free to head over to your app wherever you are listening, give this podcast a follow, and give the podcast a review. I would really appreciate that. In today's episode, we have Sean Ryan with us, and I think it's safe to say that November 2025 is a month he'll never forget. First of all, just a few days after recording this episode, he had his first child, which obviously is the biggest thing that happened in November. Congrats, Sean. Another big thing that happened was that he ran a 2:15 in Indy, and with that he qualified for the Olympic trial qualifiers, the OTQ, a big deal. And then a couple of days after recording this episode, he went on to run a half marathon. I think he briefly mentioned that in our chat. And he won that in St. Pete Run Fest. So just an amazing month for Sean. It's clear that he's done a lot of things right in his running. And I'm excited to chat more with him when things have calmed down a bit. I'm sure that running is not really the thing that he's thinking the most about these days. So you're going to hear from Sean in a bit. I just got home from the US. I just slept 11 hours, which felt amazing because I didn't really sleep at all for a very long time yesterday, and it felt good to get back. And now back to Norway after a great week of Thanksgiving, and a lot of things have happened for me running wise during this week, and I'm so happy to say that I feel like I'm 100% back running. I had a nightmare last night that I wasn't able to run again, that I got sick, but you know, it's felt so good to just be back running, be able to run longer runs, been able to, you know, almost go out for 2-hour long runs and feel great at the end, and just feeling like I wanted to continue running. So I just want to give a big shout out to John Green for helping me get back to the level of just running. We made a plan that we were going to do like 10 minutes every day in the beginning because my lungs were off. And honestly, I did not think that I would find myself being where I'm at December 1st because it just felt so bad. So John has helped me a lot, and it's been so nice. He's been following me up, you know, calling me, and we've been chatting and finding a plan together. But mostly it's his plan, and I just really, really appreciate that. So I'm happy to be back running. I'm happy to be back here recording more podcasts. There have been a lot of them just scheduled. I'm really sorry that this episode now comes out a bit like a few hours later than it usually is, but I was not fit to record last night when I got home from the US. So really appreciate you being here. I think that this episode with Sean will be very interesting. At least I found it to be super interesting. So that is a good one. I just want you to enjoy the episode, enjoy the run, whatever you're doing when you're listening to this, and yeah, just enjoy it. Sean, welcome to the Marathon Podcast, and congrats on an amazing race last weekend.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I think we have to start with what you just told me. So you obviously did a very fast marathon in Indy, and then I asked you how your legs were, and then you told me that you're not really resting this weekend.
Well, I'm going in between. I'll call it resting in the way that no workouts, just easy runs, try to get a little bit of normal back into my legs. But yeah, back at it in 8 days after the marathon, a little half coming up. So 13.1 is a lot more manageable. So that should be, I mean, who knows, but it shouldn't be as hard.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually just feel like a short run.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, before we dive into everything running and your journey, why don't you, like present yourself, who you are, and a little bit about your running background?
Of course. So, yeah, you mentioned, Sean Ryan. Um, I started running middle of high school. So I think around I guess I would have been 16 at the time, probably 16 or 17. Um, got got into it because I needed to find a sport. I liked sports, but not good enough to play basketball in high school, so I had to figure something else out. And both my parents were runners back in their day, so I was like, well, maybe I'll be good at this. At least it's a crew to talk to and hang out with. But I ended up being like decent at it pretty quickly, not like amazing, but good enough. So stuck with that. 2 years of high school running, 2.5. Started looking around colleges to run at. Ended up going to a Division II school, Lewis University, outside of suburbs of Chicago kind of area. 4.5 years there, great. Just really learning, finding out, how does the sport of running work. Like I didn't really know much going into it. In high school, I wasn't exactly the most well versed in any of the training or anything like that. But I had a great coach in James Kearney, and he you know, really presented us exactly how how you build up an aerobic base, how you go about getting speed in your legs and getting just equipped for becoming a more elite in the ability to run rather than what I came in as. I think I was also one of the I walked on, so I was not exactly a priority recruit by any means. I not on scholarship or anything, but I took a chance, got a spot on the team. So after 3.5 or 4.5 years there, I ended up getting pretty good. Not, I still wouldn't say I'm uh like elite by the end of it, but I was pretty good. I was, I think, like 61st at my last national meet for cross country. So doing that, and then yeah, the last year since then, I guess, just figuring out the post collegiate running world. When you're don't really have a team or anything, so you're trying to figure out how does training work, mixing that with working, doing regular life things. So that's been the last year for me, is mixing that together with the running, and then I'm also having a kid in a few weeks, so just balancing the regular life things outside just the sport of running has been an interesting last year.
So there are a lot of changes and a lot of new things in your life right now, and
Of
more to
course.
come.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you or I guess we need to establish how old you are today.
hmm 23 now. I'm turning 24 in a few weeks.
Cool.
So
And
yeah.
yeah, and you ran your first marathon this spring, is that right?
Yeah, so I did the Flying Pig, which is the Cincinnati's big marathon. I grew up in that area. So for like years in high school, I was like, oh, one day I'll come back and run this thing. And obviously I finished school in December. So I was like, well, this is perfect time. This one takes place in May. 5 months is, more than enough time to train for a marathon. I might as well get ready for this. So I figured that'd be a good debut, and not exactly the fastest course to run on, but I think because of that, it ends up being a good place to start, because you can't really get out aggressive. You can't make dumb mistakes, or else they'll get bad fast. So you're kind of forced to be a little cautious early on. So definitely a good intro to marathoning.
I guess you proved that you had more to give in Indy now, because then you did a 2:15, right? So it's like almost a
Yeah.
7, or was it a 7 minute PR?
I think technically it was 7 minutes and 3 seconds, I think is what it would have
Yeah.
been. So yeah, pretty much exactly 7 minutes.
So if we just briefly touch on this last marathon first, because 2:15, you are obviously you qualify for the OTQ, and that is fun and cool, but it's your second marathon. You're 23 years old. There are a lot of years of marathoning left. What does that
Exactly.
do to your ambitions and the way, or the yeah, what you're thinking about in terms of marathon running going forward?
Um, it is hard to. I guess I haven't really grips with it yet, because now in my head, I mean, it is one of those things, and I've always been this way, and I think a lot of people who are, who run are this way, where you have this giant goal that you look forward to, and it's all you think about for this, like, this long period of time, and then you get to it and you're successful, like, you get it and it's great. And then, a day or two later, it's, what do I do now, Like, I caught the car, I gotta find a new one to chase now. So, uh, yeah, there's definitely a lot more room for improvement, I think. And, I definitely have a lot of time to do it. So I think the hardest part now is figuring out what exactly that next goal should be and how to execute it. So I think whether it's just, looking at the next minute barrier, if it's like getting under 2:15 or getting, under 2:14, or, maybe if it's less concrete and it's more, figuring out fueling better, because not totally into the fueling process of a marathon yet. So, it's things like that. It's you try to pick and choose what the new goal should be, and I think I'm still in the middle of just, figuring out what that should look like.
Yeah, because from the outside, like at least for me, when I look at you and I hear, 'cause when I was reading about your first marathon this spring, 2:22, 2:15 now, my thoughts, I'm a very ambitious person myself, but like if I found myself in your situation, I would be like, well, professional running, here I come, kind of like that's where what my head would immediately jump to. And
Yeah.
does that, is that also something that you think about?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's like running is a little weird because, I mean, obviously, in like the big sports that everybody watches, basketball, football, soccer, it's like you get to the point and there's a concrete professional league and you either make it or you don't. Whereas running, it's like sponsorship based. You can kind of get, there's just varying degrees of how much like into the professional world you are, I guess. Like, even I ran a race a month ago or a month and a half ago in Virginia, a 10-mile race, the Virginia 10-miler. Great race. Really competitive field. They bring out, a good number of pros, and just being in the room with them for like the elite meeting the day before, I was, it's just a little bit like, am I a part of this now? I don't, like, it doesn't feel like I should be, but like, I'm here. And you see how they are, and the things they do, and it's like, I guess maybe now I'm, getting close to that. I don't want to be like, obviously there's still time to drop to get to exactly where they are, but yeah, I think after the 2:15, it was, and obviously, like you're mentioning, I still have a lot of time to keep getting better. Um, I think it's just figuring out what avenues to get, because I mean, I'm very novice in this. I'm not even entirely sure how you get a sponsorship on anything. So I need to talk to people who, have been through this, or, are on that trajectory, maybe who are in the know more, and figure out what that would even look like, how to go about it. But yeah, ideally, like, it would be figure out a way to, make this more of a fruitful pursuit, maybe financially, other than the way it is now, where, I'm just hoping to get into races for free and then traveling for those.
Yeah, and I totally get what you mean in terms, especially in terms of the, if we look at the definition of professional, obviously you will have to have a sponsor and get paid and all of that, and that is something that can be challenging regardless of your level, right? You do see runners who are really, really up there in the majors, and they might not be like, they might not have that much financial support, but I feel like when I, at least when I speak to American runners, in the OTQ is a big deal, and I'm sure like you're stoked that you qualified for that. But with that 2:15 and your second marathon, and when the OTQ is actually happening, then I would say that it's more realistic that you're running closer to like maybe to somewhere between 2:10 and 2:15. Who knows where you're at that point? But it's just that in terms of the level, you have that potential, and I would just think that to a lot of people, qualifying for the OTQ is a big deal, whilst for you it might actually become more about performing at the
Hmm.
OTQ. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts now, like 5, 6 days after actually qualifying?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the parts where it is odd, because I mean, you look at the people who are really competing for those top 3 spots to get in, to the Olympics, and I see those people, I'm a huge fan of those people. I just looked up to them for years, and I think they're like, you have the Connor Mance, the Clayton Young, um, obviously Joel Reichow's the big one right now. You look at them and it's like, wow, this is like these guys are awesome. This is insane. But, yeah, now it's kind of shifting my headspace to, okay, how do I maybe get on to, maybe not their level exactly, but maybe the outskirts of their level, and then whoever you never know what happens on race day, where if I can get myself to be, competitive enough where if it takes a few people having a bad day and then you having a great day, you never know. I mean, it was those, I think the 2020 trials before, Japan where, it was, Jake Riley, I think was his name, who was, kind of a no name, not a big deal guy, and then he showed up and got top 3 at the trials, and all of a sudden there he is, off the Olympics. He got sponsorship right after, I think, where like that's the thing that once you get that OTQ, you have like the chance, to go for that. So I think it's just figuring out now how do you keep, leveling up to that point and making the most of like the time that I have, because obviously hitting it this early in the qualifying window, I have, 2.5 years to get ready for that and to really make myself like a threat for it. So that's a lot of figuring out right now, whereas just, how do you get how do you chop off every possible second, every possible minute that I can to get to that point? And it's weird to think that I'm in a space now where I could say that because obviously, uh, you know, I just I never thought myself as overly elite exactly. So it is odd.
Because that was my next question, that running a 222 like you did in the spring, that is super cool to tell your friends and family about, and they will be like, oh my god, did you really run that fast? And it is really fast, but in terms of, in the world of OTQ or professional marathon runners or marathon runners who are very invested in this, they will probably be like, yeah, that's a good time, good for you. And I don't mean
Exactly.
to downplay a do not mean to
No, I
downplay a
agree.
222, but I'm just saying that running a 215 kind of just brings you into a completely different space and different level. And I would just
Exactly.
assume that for you too, that maybe it changes a lot. So last Saturday might have in some ways changed your life, not necessarily in the way that you can feel it from day to day, but in the way you are looking at your own running, because now you are all of all of a sudden this is like a very, I don't know, a bright future because of that one result, right? I don't know if
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
understand what I'm getting at, but
No, yeah, and
how has
I agree
that been
entirely.
for you? Yeah, because what has this week actually been like? As like a lot of reflections and thoughts, I assume.
Yeah, most of it is just thinking about like I mean, part of it doesn't feel real still. There's part of me where it's like, man, I actually can't believe I did that. But then the part of me that it's like I maybe it's my hubris, I don't know, or my ego where I'm like, maybe I could have ran faster. That was maybe it should have been better. So this week has been a lot of thinking about the specifics, like what can I like nail down, in the immediate that can make me, more competitive, more elite at the marathon. Because I think a lot of it will come with time. I think unfortunately the way the marathon is you just have to run a lot. And there's no like there's no secret sauce to it, I guess. You just have to put in miles for, months at a time, years at a time. And then that time will drop if you're, consistent, you keep showing up. But then there's other things that, like I mentioned earlier, the fueling, like at Indy, I was doing, the goal was just gels and bring them down with water. I got through, 2 of them fine. Third one, I was like, I think I like almost threw up mid race. I was like trying to take it, and I was like, I can't even consume this right now. And I was like, threw water in my mouth and spit it all up. I was like, I'm done. This is it. Like whatever I have in my body for next, I think I took that at 20. So whatever I have for the next 6 miles is what I have. Like there's nothing else coming in now. So I think nailing down that part, or just things like that where it's more immediate, uh, more concrete things that I know fixing these could lead to, quick improvements. that's pretty much all I've been thinking about for this week. I have a hard time with appreciating things, so it pretty quickly went from me being extremely happy to me being like, "All right, you gotta be better now. Like, we gotta figure this out." So, which is maybe, I don't know, probably not the best thing. I should probably appreciate it a little bit more. But I just, I think that helps me, looking forward and not being satisfied with it in a way where maybe doesn't help me feel good, but it does help me, improve. So that's been most of my thoughts for this last week is just finding ways to improve. And, like you were mentioning earlier, getting up to like, those spots at the top of like the trial qualifier guys, how do you compete with them?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people, listeners here, at least for me, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. That after a marathon, I think that it doesn't really matter what level you're at, you are super happy. So like my first marathon, super happy, did a 2:52, and then after a couple of days on Instagram seeing other people running, I'm like, oh yeah, it's not that fast after all, is it? And then so I start changing the perspective on it. Then I did a 2:47 and I was still like just as happy, really proud. And then 2 days later, it's like, oh, it's not that good. I need to keep working. And I think that I guess it really depends on how you look at it. But for me, at least, I feel like I'm able to appreciate it and I'm able to see, and I hope you're able to see that 2:15 is not something that anyone can do. There are very few people in the world that can do that if you look at the statistics. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be hungry for more, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go in between the moments of, appreciating and being happy. And then, yeah, like you're saying, it's just like you go on your phone, you see somebody else doing something. It's like, well, gotta do that now, I guess. So
You see
it's
Connor
it's
Mans is
definitely ever flowing.
yeah, you see Connor Mans in Chicago, and you're like, okay, there's still a way to go.
Exactly. It's like, well, he's doing 204, like, 215 is not exactly keeping up with that. So gotta figure out a way to get, there, I guess. But yeah,
But I'm not sure, like, and I'm curious to hear your take on this because now obviously you are a 2:15 marathoner, and then you can actually start looking at that difference. Like I'm obviously not comparing myself to Connor Mans in any way. So like for me,
no, yeah,
his time is a different sport than what I'm doing at 2:47. But uh, I would also say that like, if I ever got to 2:15, then I think I would also be like, well, I'm only 11 minutes behind Connor Mans, and he's pretty fast.
yeah, exactly. It starts to rationalize it more. I think, like, yeah, as soon as I run a 214, it's like, well, there's 10 minutes to go now. And I would
Yeah.
probably keep thinking that way. It's like each minute is just like a man, I'm getting close. But what he does is obviously, I mean, honestly, even at 215, I look at what he does a little bit. I'm like, man, this is not what I'm doing. This is moving.
Yeah. No, I mean, what he did in Chicago, I think it's insane, and uh, yeah. But I think that also at 23 for you, seeing something like that, I would just assume that it's inspiring, and especially now that you're at the level you're at, because Kipchoge, he's 40 years old and he still did New York Marathon at a high level, and he's been able to still do pretty well, right? And that is
Exactly.
17 years away for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think,
So what?
I don't know. I don't know if it'll be a shift of this or not, but I wonder if more people will start to jump into the marathon, sooner at a younger age. I think it was one of those things where guys would push it off for a while and then eventually jump into it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. I actually had a call with a girl. Her name is Lucy, and she's the youngest ever 7 major finisher. So she did her first major in London last year, and then she was 18, and then she turned
Jeez.
19, but she did New York now, and that was the seventh. So within like just a year and a half, she did all seven, and she didn't really have a running background, so she started running. Was it 4 months prior to London or something like that? And we were just talking about how a lot of her friends were now inspired and they wanted to do the same thing. And I was saying that, but that used to be kind of that midlife crisis. Like for me, for instance, turning 30 and okay, now I need some new goals. This is what I'm doing. You didn't really hear about 20-year-olds running marathons.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. So I don't know. It might just be the trend. I mean, running as a whole, it seemed like in the last year and a half, it's kind of really picked up as a, the trendier thing to do. So I think I'm
Yeah.
guessing marathons will be right there with it.
I did read an article about how now on Wall Street, like the biggest brag is your marathon time. So if you're a sub 3 marathoner, you kind of have cred.
Yeah,
So it
I think I saw
probably
that.
used to be like who had the best contacts with everything else, and then now it's just about
Yeah,
who's the fastest.
it's crazy. Yeah, definitely coming up as a big time thing right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. But what have
Mhm.
like the reactions from other people after your marathon? I would assume that lot of people kind of noticed what you did, and whether it's friends or family, and maybe just in general.
Yeah, and most of it is just friends and family, reaching out and any person that kind of knew me. I had a good amount of people reach out and be like, "Wow, that's amazing," and that's always it's always nice to hear something like that. People are impressed by something you're doing. Like, I don't know, it's just nice. But yeah, definitely a lot. I think it depended on uh how much I was like talking to a person recently. Like I had friends that I haven't talked to as much in the last I don't know how long, but and they were trying to be like, "What is this? Like, what has happened here? Like, this is insane." I was like, I mean, I've been running like that. I waste a lot of time doing this. I better be good at it. But then obviously, like, I live in Tampa, Florida, and I have a group of guys down here that I train with, and their reaction is generally like, "Oh, we knew this was gonna happen." I was like, "All right, come on, let's calm down a little bit." But yeah, it's definitely been a very nice reaction, very positive. So that's always good to hear.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and yeah, it is very impressive. And you said that uh, that you say I'm spending a lot of time on this, so you better run fast. But I'm still curious, did you expect or think that you would run as fast as 2:15?
Yes and no. Yes, as in like obviously, I know people do like the ABC goal type of thing where, you have an A goal. If you don't hit that, you hit the B, obviously. So my A like goal was around like the 2:15:30, maybe just under. And I knew like on a great day I can get there. Like I can reach that, I think. Um, it didn't really hit me for a while because when I set out for the Indy Marathon, that was the goal. But then maybe like 7 weeks out, maybe I don't know if that's totally right. Maybe like around 8 weeks out, I was like, this isn't really the training wasn't like going amazingly well. I didn't feel, totally great about it. Doing workouts, having a hard time in the paces I was trying to hit. And I was like, all right, maybe it's just a goal here to, like a like 2:18, 2:17 kind of thing, like be happy if I can get under the old trials time, which was like 2:18. Um, and then I had like one long run. I think it might have been like earlier mid-October where it was like 10 moderate, so like around like 6 minute pace, and then 10 at marathon goal pace. And like it went extremely well. The 10 right at like 5:10 the whole time, maybe just under even. And I was felt great, fueled properly for that, felt like amazing. And I was like, all right, maybe there is a world where this is possible. Like maybe I wasn't like, insane to say, go for this trials time of 2:15 something. Like it might be real. And so yeah, the last like 2 or 3 weeks where you're kinda like, you're doing it I did, like, essentially a 2-week taper, I think. Um, it was just a lot of me being like, "Don't mess this up, like, you're in shape, you can do this, just don't mess up the training right now. Just, keep doing enough and not too much." So, that was I definitely knew it was gonna be possible. I think the 2:22 that I ran in the spring too, like, I wanna say if I was on a flatter course that more realistically could have been around, like, a 2:19, high 2:18. Um, just the nature of that course, though, is you're going up and down rolling hills constantly, and, the first half is not exactly, uh, not exactly keen for quick running. So, I think that one maybe made from the outside, it can look like, oh, that's a giant jump, like kind of ridiculous. But in my head, that's more of like a because I knew what I could do there, like on a flat course. I was like, I think I can drop this time, knowing more going into this one. I think the jump from a debut to a second marathon, I mean, you just know so much more, like based off of just experiencing it the one time. That was probably the most important part, honestly.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I got the feeling too when you were talking about that first marathon that you probably had more in you in terms of maybe you could have just solved the race better, but also mostly maybe because of that course and the profile of that. So I think it makes sense, but still, when you're getting so say it was a 2:18:19 marathon, when you're getting down to those times and then still improving from that to 2:15 within just a few months, that is still very impressive, I would say. So it's not, you shouldn't downplay the progress, but I understand that it's probably not 7 minutes.
No, yeah. So yeah, it definitely very very happy with the progress, but yeah, I don't want to downplay that at all. But you know, I think the context of it in my head made
Yeah,
the jump a little bit more realistic is all, I think.
yeah. So why did you choose Indy? I know it's a very popular marathon, but what was the reason why you chose that one?
I mean, technically the biggest reason was just I was too late for Chicago. And I would have loved Chicago because like obviously I went to school in the area and obviously it's a great course, great field. But A, my time wasn't fast enough to get into the very elite area. And B, obviously just way behind on signing up for it. So I was kind of looking around, and I had a friend um, who mentioned India. I was like, oh, I totally forgot about that one. And I looked into it, flat course. They had a good elite field it seen in prior years, and I knew because it was just after the window for the OTQ opening. I knew that there would probably be a lot of people in the Midwest, U.S. who are going to be shooting for it there. Because in terms of getting at the OTQ early, there's kind of seemingly three options, and it would be Chicago, Indy, and then the CIN out in Sacramento. So I knew there'd be, at least a good number of people at Indy going for it. And it was a flat course from other people that I know that had ran it. So I was like, this just seems like a perfect opportunity to go and, you know, take a shot at it, really.
Ah, cool. I think something that I realize now that is like I'm obviously very into. I'm talking to a lot of American runners, and so I'm very into the OTQ. But
Mhm.
for the listeners who are not from the US, they might be like, "What is this OTQ that they keep referring to?" And obviously, that's the Olympic time trials where you can qualify for the Olympics, and that is an event that is when is it held?
I think it's March of 2028. So it's
Yeah.
usually 3 or 4 months before the Olympics.
And can you just say a little bit about, as an American and as an American runner, say a little bit about, how big of a deal this actually is just to qualify for the qualifier, and also what it takes right now?
Yeah, so obviously the qualifying time, 2:16. That's the B standard they call it. If you hit the A, I don't remember what the A standard is actually, but the A standard, they'll pay for you to come out and everything. They'll cover it all because that's kind of like, they're guys who they really think have a shot at the Olympics at the or qualifying for the Olympics. But yeah, the OTQ is like the white whale for any American runner, at least in this like in the range I'm in where everybody's shooting for that. It's like the goal is to get to the trials, get a shot at it. It's also just a nice thing to say, oh, I qualified for the Olympic trials. Maybe to like the unknowing person, it sounds like qualified for Olympics. Oh wow, and then kind of passed off as sounding a little nicer, but yeah. So that's the biggest thing is just see how many Americans can run 5 minute 11-second mile pace. I think that's just under the trial standard. So that seems to be what everybody's goal is going to be for the next 2.5 years on the U.S. side at least.
Yeah, because obviously it's pretty hard to get in, and it's a big deal. And so for you being there, it is a big deal. And I've been reflecting on this over the last maybe 2 years since I first heard people talking about how big of a deal this was. And I almost feel like obviously it's not like going to the Olympics, but I do feel like there's a lot of prestige and people really take pride in, as they should. Like, but it's pretty cool to see what that kind of means these days to just qualify for the qualifier.
Exactly, yeah. It is a little funny that, you get it and it's the big goal of, like, a lot of people, but it is just a qualifier, whereas, like, you know, I mean, technically, it's great to be there, like, I'm extremely excited that I qualified, but it is funny where it's like, it's not the Olympics, it's just the chance to go, but, again, like you were saying, like, it means a lot to so many people and obviously me included, and, if you're one of the I don't know how many usually or in past years have gotten in, but if you're one of the, 200-ish guys or girls that are able to get in to that race, it's extremely exciting.
Yeah, and I also think that as an American, because that's something that I'm from Norway, where there are 5 million people, right? It's like when we have the Olympic qualifier, it's called the national championships. Like that is what it usually is. They use that for that. And obviously, when I qualified for the national championships as a speed skater, that was like first time I did that. That was a big deal. And then eventually, you're like, yeah, of course I am, because there are not that many skaters, and you kind of end up not feeling like it's that big of a deal. But then you look at the US, and I don't know how many people live in the US. I don't have those numbers in the front of my head, but like there are a lot of people, a lot of runners. And so qualifying for the Olympics is super, super hard. And I guess you could almost say that you could almost compare it to, or qualifying to for the qualifier could be almost harder in the US than it is for a Norwegian to qualify for the Olympics, if that makes sense.
I don't know if it is, because I mean, if you're for Norway, you still have to have the standard for the Olympics to get in too, don't you? Or is that I forget how that
Yeah,
works
yeah,
actually.
yeah, you do. Yeah, no, you do.
So that
So
part
obviously you have to
maybe
be
even harder.
you have to be yeah, so it could be, so obviously you have to be fast, but it's more like in
Yeah.
terms of who's getting to go. If you were to just look at that, then
Yes. That makes sense.
there, yeah. I mean, if you're from Kenya, then I guess like there wouldn't be any American runner in the Olympics, like if you
Yeah,
included them in it.
exactly.
So okay, so I'm curious about how you got to that 2:15 marathon, and you talked about it a little bit. Just before I ask you about that, I want to just ask you, you said that you're having a kid in a few weeks, right? So that's huge. A lot of cool things happening for you. But how do you how do you see that going forward in terms of your running? I don't think we established what you do for work, but it sounds like you're also working full time. So like
Yeah.
you're
So I'm
running
an
full
accountant full
time, and
time.
then you're gonna be a dad. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the running for the early part of next year is gonna have to take a little bit of a backseat just because in the US as an accountant, the first 5 months of the year is that's tax season. So that's busy. And it was already tough last year doing, that workload combined with training for the marathon. So I think having a kid too is gonna probably cut into a good amount of my training time. But I might just, cut out the amount of sleeping I do, honestly. Like I've never been a sleep dependent person as much. I don't really sleep too much in general. So maybe if I just cut back into hours sleeping, I can maximize my day more. I don't know. That maybe is unhealthy. I have no idea. But
I think if people listen to this, they will comment, be like, that does not sound like a good idea.
yeah, to which my wife would probably be like, "Yeah, it's the worst idea ever," which she tells me a lot because I am full of bad ideas in terms of training. But she's actually a cross country coach at a D1 university here, University of South Florida. So she gives me a lot of my coaching advice in general, telling me how I should be training and stuff. So that is nice. I have a free coach. I don't have to pay for any coaching at all. So I had that part figured out.
That's amazing.
But also it being my wife, she gets to tell me when I'm being dumb, and that hurts, but it's okay because I am a lot of the time. So yeah, it'll definitely take a backseat for a little bit, but then I think uh come May, I should be able to get back into, full training, full getting ready for one of those fall marathons. I don't know what it'll be yet, but one of the three of, like I was saying earlier, Chicago, Indianapolis, or CIN. I think one of those three I'll probably be gearing up for, and I should have the time, to get ready for it.
You should get one of those running strollers. Apparently, there are some really good ones.
Already have it. We were on top. That was one of the first things I was like, we got to get this. There's no questions asked here. We need a running stroller. So that will save me a lot of time. And I think I'd imagine it's a lot harder than just running. So it should make me better, I guess. I don't know. It'll make
No,
easy days a
I
lot harder.
remember. Yeah, because that's for sure. But I read Born to Run at some point, and then they were talking about different ways of finding time for training and how you could do that. And they were talking about strollers and how that really was a helpful tool to just become a better runner. So you might just end up being much faster after those months rather than,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Who knows? I figured it out very quickly. That's all I know.
Yeah. Okay, so you started running pretty early. You've been running for a long time. And when you did that first marathon, you said that you moved back, or you were done with college in December, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I
And so
graduated
then
college
you
in December
decided
of
to do your first
24.
marathon.
Mm-hmm. And that would have been May 25.
Yeah, and so what made you, was that something that you were like, you said that you would do it eventually, but was it kind of just a random idea, or was it kind of a long-term plan that you were like, okay, as soon as I'm done with college, then I'm gonna do that?
I'd kind of been thinking about it for a long time. Um, Maybe at least the last like year and a half or 2 years that I was in college. I was kind of like, maybe not that race specifically, but I kind of planned on, as soon as I'm done with college, get ready for a marathon, where that would be, I wouldn't totally say, but um, I'm not exactly like fast. So like in college, the longest race we do is the 10K, which is like, it's long. So, I was better at that than any of the other ones, but not long enough to really, knock out the guys who are like really fast. So the marathon, you kind of force out the guys who are like crazy quick. You got to, really be committed to it to be doing like the long distance part. So I knew, like, with my training, I was one of the higher mileage guys on the team too. I knew that I would probably be more akin to a long distance race like the marathon. So, and I had no intentions of stopping the train because I don't know, I like to stay active. I like to do things. So I was like, well, no reason to take too much time off here. So for a while, I had thought, yeah, as soon as I'm done in the college portion of this, I'll probably jump up to the marathon pretty quickly.
But does that mean that when you were done with college and done kind of running in college, that you felt like your running career was kind of paused, or that you kind of ended it in a way, but then you started training for a marathon for fun, and then now you're kind of back to, oh, maybe this is a thing I can do? Or
I didn't. I know a lot of people in the U.S. when you get out of college, because you don't have your team anymore, obviously, so you lose your training partners. So I think it's like it can feel like kind of like the end. But I think for me, because I had planned on the marathon in general, I was like, you know what? As soon as we're done with this, a week or two off, and then straight into marathon training. Like we're just gonna, hit it hard, so I don't have to. A, so I don't lose too much, and B, so that way I'm just like staying on top of things. It helps me like stay productive, stay on top of like everything I'm doing in life. So I was like, let's keep on this training schedule as consistently as possible, like pretty quickly, just so because
so
I do fear taking a break and then getting too okay with the break and then not wanting to come back, which I don't think would happen,
yeah.
but you never know.
No, that makes sense. It's always hard to start after the holiday, if you had some days off, or even if you were sick or injured, it's like all I want to do is run, but then you start running and it's like, oh, it wasn't that much fun and it's still hard to get out there. But yes, I totally see what you mean. But does it mean that when you decided to start training for the marathon, that you didn't just do it to see how fast you could do a marathon, you kind of did it with the ambition of, if not going all in, but just prioritizing it quite a lot, kind of like you'd done with the shorter distances previously?
Yeah, I think it kind of was essentially going as all in as I could while, maintaining a life outside of it with, doing the regular things in work and just everyday life issues, just dealing with those. I think I was kind of like, let's just stay on this and stay as committed to like a concrete schedule as possible and just see how much I can do with um, mixing into my regular life and essentially making it part of my regular life, I guess. Where it's like, my daily routine is I go to work, but before I go to work or after I go to work, I have this workout on this day and this day is an easy day. And, you know, just maintain the schedule and see like, I guess mirroring as much of professional training as I could within my regular life schedule.
Yeah. And I guess that brings us to the like questions that I have about your training. What first of all, you said that you're a big mileage guy in the first place, so you were higher mileage than your teammates. How was it for you to kind of head into that marathon block? Were you self-coached or did your wife coach you? And was it kind of hard to make that transition?
Um, it wasn't too hard because I guess technically for I was high mileage for like collegiate US running, which where when you're doing the 10K, you don't really need to do more than maybe technically like 85 miles a week would probably be enough. But I was typically training around like the last year I was there, I was doing 95 to 100 most weeks. And I was pretty comfortable there. I was, not having any issues and I was getting better. So, um, because that was a little bit more than you probably need for a 10K, it kind of translates over well to the marathon already. Whereas like that training, I probably could have, just gone into a marathon, like not technically right away because I was pretty burnt out by the end of that season, but maintain that training essentially set you up for a marathon well. So that's what a lot of my coaching then is stealing the workouts that my coach gave me through college and then, just adjusting them in certain ways, maybe adding some new things in. Uh, I maintained a pretty similar schedule to what I did in college in terms of like what each day was. Um, just a few shifts on like every now and then I would switch to the long run from Saturday and Sunday. I would alternate those days every now and then. But most of the time was just copying that. And then if there was a workout where I couldn't figure it out, or I had no idea what to do at this certain time in the training schedule, then I'd go to my wife and be like, what do you think makes sense here? What's a workout? If I want to do this, how do I make that a workout and make it make sense? And she tells me what to do.
Awesome. That's perfect. How do you feel like that works of using your wife as kind of a sparring partner or a coach in that way? Because some people can find that challenging.
I think it's good in the fact that we're both very um we're like very transparent with each other. Like we don't really like, we just say whatever we're thinking. So she's able to be like very honest with me about what my training looks like and how it should look. And I'm okay. Like I'm never like I don't think I'm the most correct person in the world. So I'm not too stubborn on things like that. So she's like, well, that doesn't make sense. You should do this. I'll usually just listen and be like, yeah, you're right. I don't know what I'm thinking. And then it works in the way that it helps her develop her coaching abilities and the things that she's able to, to explain then to her athletes that she actually is coaching. Uh, and the knowledge base that she has on distance running, I think it helps both of us in that way. So then it's beneficial for both of us, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. It's nice that you're able to combine that, and I guess it also is a bit different because you are both. It sounds like you both have kind of athletic minds, if that makes sense, like mindsets. That probably helps a lot. compared to
Yeah.
if you or your wife were to try to coach each other and one was like didn't come from an athletic background at all and you were like a bit lazy, didn't really want to go out there or do whatever it took to reach your goals, that could probably be more
Exactly.
challenging.
Yeah. So yeah, anytime that I mean, it's not too often, but anytime that I'm, not feeling up to something, it's just be like, just go out there and just do it. Like get it done. And I'm like, all right, you're right. So it works out really well in that way.
Yeah, cool. So what did your week normally look like if we like go back to December when you first started your marathon block? And curious to hear if there were big differences between that first marathon block and this one. But just first of all, in that transition, you said that you used some of your college coaches' workouts or trainings. What did it look like for you? And also in terms of the mileage, what were you at?
So for that first marathon block, uh, because I was working more because of the tax season, I was sitting more around 90 to 95, so a tad lower, but not too different. Um, and like that one would vary a lot more based on how busy I was. So like there'd be weeks where I dropped down to like 85, 80. So it really fluctuated a good amount between 85 and 95 for the most of the time. Um, and that was a lot of, running at night. I get off work at call it like 6 p.m. a lot of nights, and then go out and run for like a couple hours, doing a workout, and then, back home around I don't know when it was, maybe 7:30 or 8. So that was a lot of late nights on that time of the year. And it was definitely a little bit more restrictive of the training. So that was a little tougher. But for this last block, when we're not in the tax season, uh then I was just like, I'll just get up really early before work and get these done. So I was, getting up at most days like 4 a.m., 3:45 or 4 a.m., try to get up around and moving, and then uh get out the door by, 4:45. And then for the most part, I think I was pretty consistently at 100 miles almost every single week for that training block, besides like, the occasional down week.
Yeah, so that's impressive. I honestly, I respect people like you so much for being able to get up at that time. That is, I feel like I can be very dedicated, but if I ever get up at like 4 or 5 a.m. to work out, you can bet that I will brag about that for a very long time and kind of
Yeah,
drop that in every conversation. It's like, oh yeah, I had to wake up at 4 a.m. the other day, or I would just be at a
exactly.
client's and like, oh yeah, I went for a run this morning, and they're like, how did you do that? It's 7:30.
Yeah, it's like a slight mental superiority. You're like, well, my day started at 4 a.m. I don't know about you guys,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's definitely
Yeah,
it doesn't feel good. You're definitely tired.
yeah. So how did you structure it in terms of workouts? And I would assume that also maybe the long run was something that you had to change a little bit because that is probably the one thing. My guess would be that that is the one thing that was the biggest change for you in terms of the structure of your training compared to, say, working or training for a 10K.
Yeah, so that was the biggest change is throwing workouts into long runs. So you're not just going out for go run 20 miles. It's like I mentioned earlier, 10 miles and then 10 miles at this pace and then a cool down, or you know 8 miles and then a short fartlek for 4 or 5 miles and then 5 miles at marathon pace. So that's definitely the biggest change. And then also the feeling part, because you can't just go out there and do that with nothing. You got to figure out some sort of nutrition that you're getting down so you're able to do it. Um, but that's definitely the biggest change from training for the 10K, where maybe a couple times a year we do a workout in the middle of a long run, but it was much shorter and definitely less like pace intensive, I guess. Where it's more of a kind of get your legs moving more on like a long effort, but not exactly dedicated to the point of hitting a certain pace at a certain like distance. So that was the biggest change. And then I did a lot more threshold work this time around than I used to. We did a good amount when I was in college of threshold work, but it became where, you know, each week was either threshold workout and long run with some sort of workout of like a race base in it, and then another week would be threshold workout and tempo work around marathon pace, and then a long run also with the workout. So just alternating between weeks of 3 and 2 workouts that's the biggest change is uh from the prior training, I guess.
And for the long runs, did you have kind of a standard long run that you just did every week, or did you have different structures or different kinds of long runs throughout the block?
I kind of jumped around from two main ones, which would be either X amount of miles at a moderate pace, and then um X amount of miles at a marathon. So I would do maybe 8 at moderate and then 10 at marathon and then 2 down to hit 20 total, or it'd be uh maybe 10 moderate, 8, just switching that around. That was generally one of them. And then if I ever got like bored of that, I would maybe do uh like 6 at moderate and then 6 miles of a fartlek of, maybe 90 seconds on, 90 seconds moderate. And then after that, jump back into 5 or 6 miles of marathon pace. So just kind of molding those around to hit certain mileages really was all I would do. It was kind of pretty consistent, like go in and get this workout done. And then that also made it easier to track progress over time, I think. Because that way I could tell how, I was reacting to the workout each time. And that was probably the most telling point of fitness where you're getting the data points of, okay, this one at this point I felt pretty awful hitting this pace. And then by, a week and a half later, I'm hitting that pace and it doesn't hurt too bad at that point. But then if I up the pace to this point, then it starts to hurt. And it's like, figuring out those was like the main goal of those workouts in the long runs. And that's definitely the most beneficial part of the training, I would think. So yeah, is mostly pretty consistent between those three things.
Yeah. And so they were usually workouts, like the long runs were, or they are kind of runs where you know that you'll test yourself a little bit. Maybe not like, obviously not all out, but you will still come home and be happy to be done with it, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. They're definitely tough. And, the entire time leading up to it, this is the last thing on earth I want to do right now. Just thinking about how hard it's going to be.
Yeah.
But but like you're saying, it's not like an all out hard where, you're redlining and your body feels like it's going to shut down. It's more just like wow, my legs are tired. Like this is,
Yeah.
it's a long time to be moving this quick on your feet. So yeah.
Yeah. That's what I always feel like with the long runs when I do them that way, that I'm not really worried about the pain or anything, but I'm just curious if my body will be able to do something for that long, that hard, whether that is with fueling or just stomach cramps, or my legs are usually fine, but you also never know during a run like that. You can also all of a sudden get some niggles or something that challenges you, and you have to make some decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The biggest one is, for me at least, is like, how is my body going to react to fueling? Like, am I going to, start having stomach issues and then feel horrible and then I'm chasing a bathroom, or am I going to my stomach feels like it's ripping and then all of a sudden I you know, cut back on pace a little bit. It's like, those are maybe the hardest part is the fear, is my stomach going to let me do this right now? Or is my body going to react well to doing this? Less than, this is going to be incredibly hard. It's I hope I can hold up is most of it.
But how did your body react to that transition from 10K and shorter distances to the marathon training? Did you, because I would say that maybe because you have, I would assume maybe less speed work, that could have been good. But then you also, have long runs, and that could also affect you in a negative way. How did your body respond to all of this?
I think overall, like, not too terribly because the training overall stayed relatively consistent. The toughest part was, like we were just saying, like, the long runs, with the workouts and the fueling. It was just, man, like, trying to train your stomach to be, like, able to handle, like, the gels going down and, and consuming water. Because, like, I mean, in college, I would do a long run, and I would just go do, like, 17 or 18 miles and, not really consume anything the whole time and be like, "Fine." I was like, "Well, who cares?" But, obviously, those are not structured workouts that I was doing. Those would just go out and time on feet miles. So, that was the biggest challenge to my body for sure, was just figuring those parts out. And it still kind of is a challenge. Like, I'm not even really I wouldn't say I'm even good at that part yet, but I think definitely better at least.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on that a little bit later in our conversation because I'm curious to hear your take on that. But before we do, I when you did the 10Ks, was that usually on track or was that also road running?
So that would be most of it was on track, but then for us, the cross country season, like we would do for the regular season, you have like 3 or 4 meets, and those are all 8K. And then you get to the postseason, which is the regional and then the national championship, and those are both 10K. So a lot of our training was targeted towards being ready for the 10K more. And those then obviously you're running on like regular cross country courses, like on trails in the woods, up and down hills. Um, or like is very popular in America now on like golf courses where you're running a lot faster. Um, so those were not typically as challenging. The track ones for me were challenging. I don't have the mental fortitude to be a 25 laps guy. It gets boring to me very
Oh,
quickly.
it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. But the reason I wanted to ask you about that was that one big difference that at least I never ran track the way you did, so I don't know how it is, but I would just assume that there are a few things that will change quite a lot regardless of the training. Like one is that you might spend more time on the road doing like your workouts on road because that for the marathon, I mean, because that's where you're going to compete. You obviously have the
Mhm.
fueling, but then you also have the shoe kind of decision, right? Because they at least the brands are marketing shoes as more like, oh, this is a marathon shoe, this is the 10K shoe, and then if you are
Yeah.
racing 10K on the track or cross country, those will also be very different shoes, right? So
Mhm.
what was that like? Did that feel like a big change for you when you started doing more marathon specific training?
Um, yes, on the training part for the roads, it was a lot different for me because the marathons, obviously, or when I'm training for track, obviously a lot of stuff is being done on the track. For the marathon, for the first marathon, I was rarely ever on the track at all. Like I think I maybe did 2 track workouts the entire time. Um, for this one, for Indianapolis, I got back on the track a lot, which I don't know why. It just happened to work out that way where I was like, well, this is a track workout. I'll just do it on track and, make the pacing easier. But for the shoot portion, um, they recently changed this rule in the NCAA for US colleges. It used to be that you could wear the marathon shoes on the track and be fine. Like it was legal. They recently made it illegal. So you have to wear like the spikes, like the flat like I don't know like the Dragonfly is Nike's big one and the Avanti for Adidas. You have to wear those now. Luckily they made that rule right after I got out of college. So I was able to race in the marathon shoes the entire time in college on the track at least. For cross country on the grass,
Uh-huh.
I would wear the spikes just because it gets muddy and you don't want to, be sliding around. And the shoes kind of don't help as much in general once you're on the grass. But on the track, I was wearing the Vaporfly 2 for almost every race. That was like my go-to. Love that shoe. And for a guy who's not quick like I like to say I am, the spikes. didn't really help me too much because everybody is I think it's also part of my running form was not the most beautiful. So the shoes forcing me onto, midfoot toe more and then giving you that projection forward was a huge bonus for me. So I would wear those for 10Ks, all the time. 10K, 5K. I even might have worn it for 3K one time, which might be a little bit too short to do it, but whatever. Um, so jumping onto the roads and doing marathons, it was honestly a pretty smooth transition for me because I'd already done so much work in those shoes that I was, just sticking with them and just expanding the things I was doing in terms of length then.
This is interesting because I've never thought about that when I ran track, and that is, so I'm 32, and it must have been when I was like 15, 16 maybe. So yeah, it's back in like 2007. Then obviously we didn't have any of the super shoes. So whenever we were going fast and kind of regardless of the distance, we would still be like, okay, you obviously put the spikes on if you want to go faster.
Yeah.
So, but does that mean that up until now, when this was banned or not legal anymore for the NCAA, does that mean that more people were doing that, or were you kind of one out of few who would do that in the 10K
It
on track?
was once the Vaporfly came out in like 2019 or 2020, and it was really publicly everywhere. A lot of people was really because at first it came out, it was obviously very limited, and Nike was kind of the only brand doing it. Once all the brands kind of had their own shoe and they were so widespread throughout the market, I would say from 2020 to 2022, you would see the vast majority of track races were ran from 5K, 10K. You would say the most of them were ran in the marathon shoes. So a lot of Vaporfly 2, um, not as much because they were pretty limited in their stock, but the Adidas Adios Pro 1, and then eventually the 2, like that was a very popular thing to do. Eventually, when the spikes had caught up to, the technology, like the super spikes essentially came out, like the Dragonfly and the Avanti, the Dragonfly 2, they kind of made their way back into the track. So by like late 22, 2023 and on, people are maybe, at least in the 5K, people were more often wearing those spikes. But then, obviously now 2025, you're not allowed to. I think the reason they made the ruling is because that's the official World Athletics ruling, and they wanted to catch up to that ruling, I guess. So I always make the joke that, yeah, like I got lucky. I was like the last chopper out where I was able to run in the marathon shoes the whole time, run fast in them, and then get out and not have to run the spikes. But in reality, the spike tech has caught up in general, anyways. So it's not too different. But yeah, there was a period where most people were wearing the carbon plated shoes of some sort.
I'm curious whether, we'll never know the answer to that, but how much the shoe brands themselves are, like a part of pushing that onto the NCAA and the World Athletics Federation, because you would think that like it doesn't really matter when it's that way. And the thing that will happen is obviously that people will not get rid of the Vaporflies or the Alpha Flies if that's what they're wearing. They will just have to get another pair of spikes or a few more pairs of spikes, and then you just end up having a bigger shoe park, right?
Exactly. Yes. Because yeah,
That's
like
an
they're going to sell those.
interesting take.
The number of people wearing spikes, I mean, it's pretty constricted to guys who are just doing, track and cross country, which at a certain point, less people do it. Whereas like, the road shoes, like they can sell them to anybody all the time. So yeah, maybe maybe they're
Exactly.
like, hey, we need to sell more spikes. Cut out the shoes for
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know.
Some conspiracy theories on spikes
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Vaporflies
Yeah.
here. So did you, when you started running marathons, did you still stick to the Vaporflies, or did you wear the Alpha Flies, or maybe something else?
I switched over to the Adios Pro 4, the Adidas. I'm
Okay, cool.
a big
Hmm.
Adidas guy, so yeah, most of the shoes I run in and train in are Adidas, just because I'm a big fan of the tech they have right now. I think they put out a lot of really good options. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do the Pro 4, switch over, and I've actually been really happy with that one because out of all the super shoes I've worn so far, I think they're definitely the best one. So it's definitely
Yeah.
a good option to have. I'd be very curious about
I
trying out
like
the Evo 2, the $500 pair. Those I'm
there.
curious of. Is that yeah,
There. Yeah.
those I can't imagine.
I haven't tried them yet, but they're behind me here. So
I'm very
I'm
curious.
probably, yeah, I'm curious to try them as well. I did see some videos from Copenhagen, the half marathon, and I would not recommend, or I don't think anyone has tried wearing them or running in them in the rain. They will never recommend them
Oh,
because they are so slippery. So if you ever get them, never wear them in the rain because
that is
that
good to know.
guy actually he won, but he crashed hard. Like it it was
Oh my
so
gosh.
bad. I don't know. Yeah. So it's kind of a warning to anyone, I think. I haven't worn them, but everyone I talk to who wore them, they're like, if you're running on a course where there are any corners or anything like that, you have to just slow down and be careful. And that's not really what you want on
Yeah,
like in
no.
a race.
Adidas has done that with all of their like the Pro 1 through 4. The 4 is the best out of all of them. Pro 1 to 3 had some very questionable rubber on the bottom, whereas it's hardly
Hmm.
rubber. So that's like an issue where it's like maybe they just don't care and they're like, you know what, don't wear them in the rain. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, they've
No,
always had suspect rubber on those.
it is crazy though if you get used to wearing those pro like and you're like preparing for it and then it starts raining on race day, then you just always have to have the Adios Pro like in the back of your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
Okay, so you said that you had this like or you now describe or explain what you did for that first marathon block, but also that you kind of did more track on like in the second block. It sounded like your long run kind of stayed the same, that you've kind of done the same for that. Did you do any other changes to the to your training when you started training for the second marathon?
Um, I think I'm trying to think of how that went for the last few months. I think I cut back a little bit on the tempo I was doing. So I would do because the workout structure I would do is Tuesday, Friday, Sunday 1 week, and then follow that up with Wednesday, Saturday the week after, and then just cycle back and forth because then obviously you go from Saturday then to the next Tuesday. Um, so that Friday workout would more often be my tempo work of some sort. And I think in the first training block, I had not done as much of the switching on the 14-day schedule. I was doing more of a consistent Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. So then I was always guaranteed a tempo workout each Friday. And I kind of just realized that like the marathon paced long run workout is kind of doing the same work in general. So there wasn't always a huge need to double up on those in a week. So I think I switched over to the 14-day schedule like earlier on in the training block than I had in the previous one. And then because of that, I cut back on those a little bit. And the getting on the track part was maybe the biggest change was just being more dedicated to the threshold work and making sure I had like that effort dialed in. That was probably the biggest part was just getting on a track, doing threshold work. I really didn't do that much at all the first block, and I think that helped me with getting comfortable with, the actual marathon pace, because then it's obviously the threshold is gonna be a little bit ahead of what your, tempo/marathon pace is. So I think because of that, I was able to get, more comfortable with then, slowing down to marathon pace come Sunday or Saturday, depending on when I was doing the long run. And then I think that worked better, in conjunction with each other, making the training more like all around making sense rather than just maybe too heavy on one side of things.
So that does that mean that from that first block to the second block that you were better at intensity control when you were having those threshold workouts to kind of, was the problem, you think, or not necessarily the problem, but the change that you went harder for those threshold workouts and let yourself kind of go a little bit too tough or too hard in the first block, and then you were better at taking it slower in the second block?
Yeah, I think like I think I was less intentional about threshold as a pace in general, because in that first block I really didn't think about it as much in general. So I would do what I essentially thought in my head were just quicker days, and those would be like repeats of some sort of whether it's Ks or miles or something like that. And on the second block I was like, maybe figure out what threshold pace should look like. Obviously I didn't do any lactate testing, so it's more just guessing, like educated guessing based on like, performances. And figure out what that pace looks like, and getting, you know, a better understanding of what threshold should feel like, and just using that as much as I can to, improve rather than maybe just going on like, okay, it's quick day, let's go quick. Just you're being less intentional about the things you're doing, and then obviously like then it just doesn't make as much sense. So the intentionality of it is probably the biggest part for me, was just making everything make sense for his training.
It's cool that you're saying that, because I think that this is something that I think all runners, to be honest, can learn from that. And then you have the best ones, they're really good at this. And then at least for me too, I'm trying to be smart about it. But sometimes, especially if you feel good, you're like, oh yeah, but I can run faster. And then you don't really realize that, well, if you just hold back today and you hold back next week and the week after, you will be able to push harder come race
Yeah,
day, right?
exactly. I was talking to a friend about this the other day who, like obviously he's getting into more longer distance stuff and marathons. And I shouldn't say getting into it. He's pretty good at it already, but he's obviously doing that. And he started running a little bit later than I did. And I think so much of it is just having like the time put in and like building up that base of knowledge of like how things should feel and what they should look like. And it just feels like it takes so long. And also you're kind of always changing on that, because you get faster, and then all of a sudden you have to refigure out what should this look like, what should this pace be. So I think it's just trying to stay on top of how much you know about yourself, and like constantly be like, okay, this felt this way for this reason. Let's do this and see what happens, or let's figure out this. Why did this feel this? Just figure out as much as you can about what your training looks like. And it just takes so much time to do that.
Yeah, and I would also maybe think, I don't know what you think about that, but I would think that the consequences of training a little bit too hard or like too high intensity for those threshold workouts week in and week out for a marathon block and training for a marathon, the consequences might be bigger or greater than for a 10K, because with a 10K it's a bit shorter of a race, and the racing time, competition time is shorter, and you are still running so hard, and it's more anaerobic in terms of what you need. Whilst with the marathon it's so long, so it
Yeah.
will. I think that there will be bigger differences there.
Yeah, definitely. And also like the training block in general for a marathon requires, a lot. And
Yeah,
if you're going too hard early on like, even if it's just one day a week, you're going too hard, but you're doing that for 4 or 5 weeks in a row. I mean, you're not going to make it through 12 or 16 or 20 or however long your block is. You're not going to make it to the end and feel good. You'll peak at some point, but it's not going to be the race day that you're going for. And then obviously that day comes and you have to deal with it. So definitely,
yeah,
definitely a lot more important for marathon training.
yeah. And then last thing I want to ask you about in terms of just your training plan there, you said that you changed to a 14-day kind of cycle. Is that what you said? So
Yeah.
what does that mean when you say that? What is it that you specifically mean?
So instead of the usual that I would have done, that I did all through college was Monday or not Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Friday workout, Sunday long run. Not exactly a workout, but it's still a long run. It was still like a little bit of a harder effort, and those were 3 days. So I stuck with that for a little bit, but then, and this is actually advice from my college coach. I asked him, I was like, what do you think I should do? And he explained, if you extend that period from 7 days to 14, and you think about it in a 14-day schedule, that's 5 workouts in 14 days, and you're getting, I think, 2 days rest in between every single one except for one. Like, one is going to be Friday, Sunday. So you're getting, you know, you're cycling through the work in the way that you should, where you're getting the rest and recovery you need, but still maintaining the schedule that you need. And it's not you're not at any point doing like a Sunday long run and then coming back Monday off or Monday easy, and then Tuesday either threshold or a tempo effort. You're kind of avoiding doing the long run workout, which is like the hardest effort you're going to do the whole week, and then only having one day. I think is the main idea. So you're giving yourself 2 days there each time. So then think about it in that 14-day schedule where you're going Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, week 1, and then Wednesday, Saturday. It lets you cycle through it more smoothly than you would if you were trying to force that set over and over again.
Got it. Yeah, that's super smart. Really makes sense when you say it. I think that we need more people probably need to integrate that to their training.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it at all, and I was like, I just don't know what to do here. Coach, like, what do you think I should do? And he is like, why did you try this? And I was like, you know what? Didn't even think about it.
Because for the first block, if I understand you correctly, then you would do like Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, and then just do Tuesday, Friday, Sunday again. Is that what you
Yeah.
did?
And I did that
Yeah.
for a while, and I was like, well, this isn't really working. Like, it's kind of, detrimental to Tuesday. And then if you're not able to give like the effort you need to be giving on Tuesday, I don't know, you're kind of losing that day. And then maybe your body's, reeling a little bit by Friday still. And then, that's a whole week there where you're kind of losing it. So I think I texted him about that probably like halfway through the marathon block then. And he gave me that idea. So I was able to institute it, eventually, but not as early on as I probably would have liked to. So that was a huge bonus to the indie block.
Yeah, so that is something that I would like to kind of emphasize to the listeners here now, that because compared to a lot of runners, it sounds like you have 3 workouts every week, right? But you actually do have 2. It's just that it's in a different cycle than that 7-day or Monday to Sunday that a lot of people would talk about, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And what about heart rate? Is that something that you said that you yeah, okay, you're laughing. You can answer that.
I like to keep track of heart rate. I just think it's funny because I don't have the heart rate monitor. I need to get a heart rate monitor. I really do. So I just do the one on the watch, and there's there's days where you think you can trust it, and then there's days where I'll go out and it'll tell me I had a 120 heart rate on a long run. I'm like, you know what? I know I didn't. I was breathing way too hard out there. It was just
Yeah.
But most days, it's pretty accurate. So I do like to use it a decent amount. I think it's important because like that's probably the easiest indicator of effort in terms of like just like on the base level, like how hard are you trying? Kind of, it's not always exactly accurate, and you take it in the context of what you're doing. But in terms of the resources I have, it is like the best way for me to determine effort, and if I'm going too hard on something, or if I have maybe more room for something, So I definitely look at that a lot, but I do think I have a good understanding of the context of it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense because I've said this previously on a pod too, that I come from a sport, or at least with the way I train, I use my heart rate monitor religiously, and that is always something that I've looked at quite a lot. And then I do see that a lot of runners today, they are using heart rate much more. No, sorry, they're using it much less, and it's much more by feeling. And I think that is really cool to see. The last thing I want to ask you about is the fueling. And you said that you're trying to figure it out yourself still. But what are your kind of experiences and things that you need to work on going forward?
Definitely the training within, or training fueling within the training block. Because I think at times where I would do it during long run workouts, and I was like, you know what, I'm doing this to fuel, so I feel good, but not exactly thinking about how does that feeling work maybe in a race setting? So I need to figure out exactly how do I think feeling best works for me? Where do I need to be taking it, when, and then obviously what kind of feeling do I need to be taking? Um, so that would probably end up being a big point of emphasis for me in the next few months, where I'm probably just gonna be trying every gel or drink mix brand that exists, just trying to figure out what works, what's getting carbs in, but still not like upsetting the stomach at all. That's the biggest thing. So I think obviously it's super important, and it definitely has a lot of, that's probably the biggest uh immediate area of improvement that I can work on.
I think a lot of people can definitely relate to that. I mean, that is something that a lot of people will struggle with, especially with the marathon. And I feel like I kind of had the same experience as what you were talking about with, having a couple of gels like every 5K, and then I just like, or not a couple of gels every 5K, but like have a gel at the 5K and then another 5K and another gel. And then after that, because of the intensity, I'm really struggling to just get anything else down. And I know that I need to. And so I start struggling with my stomach, and then I kind of push it back. And then I have one and I push it back. And then you get this dilemma of, okay, should I treat my stomach in a good, like, be nice to my stomach, or should I try to take more so I can perform better? And it's really hard, because if your stomach stops you, then it doesn't really matter if you have more energy.
Exactly. And it's pretty unforgiving too, where it's like the minute your stomach kind of goes, it's rarely going to just feel better again. So you kind of have to be, you're at the mercy of it. But then also you want to, I guess that's the point, is train it in a way where it can handle enough that you can, still keep your body as a whole operating at, at least as full power as possible.
Do you have a plan for it? Like you said, you were going to try different ones, but do you have a plan for how to train yourself?
Not exactly. I think it's going to be, I think I'm going to try just to see what I guess brand, because they're also different, but what brand works best for me. And then B, working on how much can I get down? Because I think it was Joe Klecker was on a podcast recently where he was talking about how he's like working on like 200 or something ridiculous. Like I forget what it was per hour.
175, I think.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, that might be a bit much, but what's like a realistic range for me? Where I guess technically at Indy I would have been taking in about maybe 50 an hour, I guess is what it would have been technically. But how do I get myself up to, the maybe close to like 80 or like 100? So I think it's just going to be see how much my stomach can handle. And it's going to be probably an uncomfortable trial. But I think it's one that I just have to do it, because I think I can, definitely make some big improvements there just off that. Because the last 2 miles at Indy, I don't want to say it was just because of fueling, but I got to those last 2 miles, I was like, I don't know if I have it in me to, like, hold this and keep going. So I think just being fueled properly could have been a huge difference there. So that'll be my main work for the next few months until whatever next race I do is.
Yeah, I think it's a good priority. It's really hard it just sucks if that is what's kind of keeping you from running fast when everything else is good. So no, it sounds like a good plan to work on that and try to figure that out. So last question that I have for you, I guess, is like we kind of talked about some things in the beginning here, but what is your dream if you were to just forget about everyone's opinions or whatever people talk about ceilings? What would you say is your dream and your goal?
If I had to go, I guess like the craziest one I can think of right now, I guess craziest in terms of like relatively possible still is getting into like the 2.0s would be amazing. Whether that takes me 5 or 6 years to get there, that's fine. But I think incrementally I'll have goals on the way there, but just getting down to like, if I can get under 210, that'd be, like revolutionary in my brain. So I think that's like the biggest dream for me is just figure out how to get to that point. Just, get that fast and I'll be happy. I say that, but I'll probably get there and then be unhappy, but that's for another time.
Yeah, no, but I love that. I mean, I believe that you can based on what you've already done, and you're so young. I sound so old when I say you're so young, but still, you're like almost, I guess, like 9 years younger than me. So you still have a lot of years left, and even when you get to my age, so I'm 33 in a few days, so. Even when you get to 33, you still have a lot of years left.
Don't they say? I feel like I always read that like your technical peak athletically is like somewhere around like early 30s, isn't it? I think I can't remember where I read this or if it was even true. I could have just read it on Twitter and it was not real. But I think that's like around that.
Yeah, and I think that especially with the marathon, they say that between 30 and 37 or something. It's kind of just crazy.
I know, because it seems, in like the scope of other professional sports, you hear that, and it's like, wow, that's old. Like if I hear a basketball player is like 35, I'm like, wow, he's been playing basketball for a really long time. He's out that much longer. But then, like you're saying, in running, I mean, Kipchoge when he broke 2, like he would have been what, 35, I think at the time, 34, 35. So it is crazy, but. We have so much more time than sometimes it feels like to, get really good at the things we want to get good at.
No, definitely. I think that it's like you said, we tend to think that because we see other sports where people are professional for so many years, and then you're like, oh yeah, but he or she, they're old now. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for guesting the Marathon Podcast. We ended up having a very long conversation. I really enjoyed this. It was nice. I learned a lot. So appreciate you taking the time and good luck.
I appreciate you having me on. I had a very good time talking about this.
Thank you so much to Sean for coming on. Really appreciated this conversation, and I hope that you did as well. In the next episode, we're actually having someone else who ran Indy, but someone who ran it for the first time. And you might remember Leah from a previous episode. She did her first marathon, and we've been staying in touch. She was sharing about her journey, about her the things that she was dealing with. Like she was just approaching her first marathon block in that first episode. So we're gonna talk more about that, more about marketing. She's in marketing, and we're passionate about a lot of the same things. So we're talking about marketing and running. We're talking about running. We're talking about her first marathon, her experience, and also everything going forward. I think that will be a great listen as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Marathon Podcast. Really appreciate you being here. And please keep tagging the Marathon Podcast wherever you are listening. I really appreciate when I get messages from you guys. And to all of you reaching out, know that I see the messages and I'm replying to them. Maybe not immediately, but it's something that I really appreciate. Thank you so much. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wall Studio.